Hi everybody, my name is Deirdre and I work in Offaly Libraries, and today for our Summer Stars reading adventure I'm going to read about Tom Crean. He was an Irish explorer that came from County Kerry. Tom Crean, the Brave Explorer, written by John and Fatty Burke and published by Gill Books. Tom was one of 10 children who grew up on a farm near Annascaul in County Kerry. He loved adventure so much that, at the age of 15, he ran away to join the British Navy and sail around the world. While his ship was moored in New Zealand, Tom met Captain Robert Scott. Scott's dream was to be the first person ever to reach the South Pole, and he asked Tom to join his crew. In 1902, after 17 days sailing, their ship, Discovery, reached Antarctica. But when they made camp in February, the seas froze around them and the ship was trapped. They lived in the freezing cold for 2 years, eating seals and seagulls to survive. They even played football on the ice. Eventually, the ice melted and Discovery was able to sail away. Many years later, Captain Scott organised another expedition with the ship Terra Nova. This time they brought dogs and ponies with them to pull their supplies. Tom loved working with the animals. He even smuggled a rabbit on board. On Christmas Day, to Tom's surprise, his pet rabbit had 17 babies, so he gave them to the crew as presents. They reached Antarctica for a second time in January 1911 and built a base camp so they could stay there for winter. Tom was always cheerful and kept everyone's spirits up by singing. As soon as the worst of the weather was over, they were keen to get started. They knew that Roald Amundsen, the famous explorer from Norway, was also trying to be the first to reach the pole. The race was on. Meanwhile, sadly, the ponies died from cold and exhaustion, so the men had to haul the sleighs themselves. Tom was very strong and tough and always did more than his share. When they had trekked 1,200 kilometres, the distance from Dublin to Cologne in Germany, Scott chose just 4 men to go on the last part of the expedition with him. Tom and his friends Bill Lashley and Teddy Evans weren't chosen, so they had to turn around and head back to base camp disappointed. On the way back, Teddy got very sick, so Tom and Bill pulled him on a sleigh. When they could go on no more, they put up a tent and Tom went on alone to get help. He trudged a further 56 kilometres to Hut Point, where there were 2 men with food and supplies. His walk had taken 18 hours and, thanks to Tom's bravery, Bill and Teddy were saved. They all waited at base camp for Scott to return, but he never did. All of his party had died and Roald Amundsen had reached the pole before them. The crew slept on the ship and played games on the ice. One of the dogs they brought even had 4 puppies. But after 9 months, the ship started to break up. They quickly removed their supplies and 3 lifeboats before it sank. The ice was cracking and drifting out to sea. Stranded, they had to find land. They rowed the lifeboats to Elephant Island, a barren rock, where they turned them upside down and sheltered underneath. Shackleton chose Tom and 4 others to sail one of the lifeboats with him to South Georgia Island for help. They sailed for 1,300 kilometres in a tiny boat through terrible weather across one of the most dangerous stretches of water in the world. Eventually, they came ashore in a damaged boat on the wrong side of the island. 3 of the men were very sick, so Tom Shackleton and Frank Worsley made the journey of their lives. They walked 64 kilometres across mountains in freezing fog. After 36 hours, they slid down the last mountain at terrific speed and reached the town of Stormness. The people of the town could not believe that these heroes were still alive. Their sick companions were rescued the next day, but it took a further 4 months to reach the rest of the men on Elephant Island. Remarkably, they all survived. After a lifetime of epic adventures, Tom went back home to Anniscall. He and his wife Nell opened a pub called the South Pole Inn. It is still there today. His neighbours called him Tom the Pole, but he didn't talk of his great adventures or difficulties in Antarctica. Many years after his death, Tom became known and celebrated as a hero because of the bravery and kindness he showed his fellow men. Now we can see the timeline of Tom's life. In 1877, Tom is born to Patrick and Catherine Crean. In 1893, Tom leaves his home and joins the Royal Navy. 1902, Tom lands in Antarctica on the ship Discovery with Captain Robert Scott. In 1904, Discovery leaves Antarctica. In 1910, Tom sails with Scott on the Terra Nova to Antarctica. In 1912, Tom returns to the base camp with Lashley and Evans. Scott and his expedition party die. In 1913, Tom receives the Albert Medal for Gallantry. In 1914, Tom joins Ernest Shackleton's Endurance exhibition. In 1915, Endurance is crushed by the ice. 1916, the adventure to reach Stormness in South Georgia begins. 1917, Tom marries Ellen Hurley. 1920, Tom retires from the Navy. In 1927, Tom and Nell opened the South Pole Inn in Anniscall in County Kerry. And in 1938, Tom dies at the age of 61. So everyone, I hope you enjoyed learning about Tom Crean and all his adventures, and that you'll join us again tomorrow for more Summer Stars reading adventures. They all waited at base camp for Scott to return, but he never did. All of his party had died and Roald Amundsen had reached the pole before them.